Imagine waking up at 2 a.m. with a stomach ache. Annoying, right? You'd probably just wait it out, maybe take something for it, and go back to sleep. Now imagine that stomach ache is the thing that's going to kill you. And imagine the nearest hospital is 1,200 miles away, buried under a continent of ice, with no plane able to land for months. That's the night a 27-year-old doctor named Leonid Rogozov stopped being a patient and became his own surgeon. This happened in 1961 at a tiny Soviet research station called Novolazarevskaya, sitting on the edge of Antarctica. Rogozov was the only doctor for 13 men. That was his entire job. Keep everyone alive. He didn't know that one night everyone would have to include himself. It started small. A dull ache low on his right side. Nausea. A fever that crept up slowly. He knew exactly what it was because he'd diagnosed it in other people 100 times. Appendicitis. In a city, this is a routine fix. You go to the hospital, they put you under, 20 minutes later it's over, and you're eating Jell-O by dinner. But Rogozov wasn't in a city. He was on a frozen, wind-scoured shelf of nothing in the middle of the Antarctic winter, where temperatures outside were dropping below -40. Could a plane reach him? No. The nearest aircraft was over 1,000 miles away, and even if a pilot had been willing to try, the blizzards made flying suicidal. Could the ship come back for him? No. The sea had already frozen solid for the season. Was there another doctor anywhere on the continent who could help, even by radio? Not really. He was, in every sense that mattered, completely alone with a ticking clock inside his own body. Appendicitis isn't just uncomfortable. If the appendix ruptures, it spills infection straight into the abdomen, and from there into the bloodstream. Without surgery, this kills you, slowly, painfully, and with total certainty. Rogozov understood the math better than anyone else on that base because he was the only one who understood medicine at all. He had two options: wait and likely die within days, or operate on himself. He'd never even seen a self-performed appendectomy attempted before, let alone done one. There was no internet to search, no manual for how to cut into your own body. He had textbooks, a basic surgical kit meant for treating frostbite and minor injuries, and the men around him, none of whom had any medical training. He picked two, a mechanical engineer and a meteorologist. Not because they had steady surgical hands, but because they were the calmest people on the team. And calm was about to matter more than skill. He set up a mirror so he could try to see the area he couldn't directly view. Almost immediately, he realized the mirror was useless. Everything in a mirror is reversed. Reach left, and your hand seems to go right. Trying to operate by reflection nearly made things worse, not better. So he made a decision that still amazes surgeons today. He put the mirror aside and worked almost entirely by feel, using his left hand to guide while his right hand made the incisions, glancing down occasionally to check his progress, but mostly trusting touch over sight. He used a local anesthetic, injected into his own abdominal wall, because general anesthesia would have meant losing consciousness, and there was nobody qualified to bring him back from that, which means he was awake, fully aware, cutting into his own body while two untrained colleagues held instruments, a mirror, and a lamp and tried not to faint. What do you think the hardest part was? Not the cutting. The hardest part was halfway through, when his strength started to fail. He grew dizzy. His pulse spiked. He had to pause every 4 or 5 minutes just to rest, fighting nausea and the creeping fog of his own body going into shock. At one point, he later admitted he genuinely believed he might lose consciousness and die right there on the table he'd built for himself. But he kept going. Roughly an hour and 45 minutes after he made the first incision, he located the appendix. It was inflamed, swollen, dangerously close to rupturing. Had he waited even another day, it likely would have burst. He removed it, sutured himself closed, and finished the operation he had started completely alone in every way that counted, even with two men standing right beside him. He survived. Within 2 weeks, he was back to his regular duties, treating his own crewmates, running tests, going about the work of an Antarctic expedition doctor like nothing extraordinary had happened at all. Here's the part that's almost stranger than the surgery itself. Researchers have spent decades since trying to understand what kept him steady enough to finish. Dr. Lawrence Palinkas, who has spent his career studying the psychology of people isolated in extreme environments like Antarctic stations, has pointed to something called winter over syndrome, the unique mental state that develops in people cut off from the outside world for months at a time. Total isolation changes how the brain processes fear, stress, even pain. Some people fall apart under that kind of pressure. Others, strangely, become almost unnervingly focused. Rogozov fell into the second group at the exact moment it counted most. Researcher Jack Stuster, who has spent years analyzing human behavior in confined, high-stress environments for organizations including NASA, has used Rogozov's case as one of the defining examples of what's called autonomous crisis competence. That's the ability to keep functioning, keep thinking clearly, keep making correct decisions, when there is no one coming to help and no rule book for the exact situation you're in. It's part of why space agencies still study this story today. If you're going to send people to Mars one day, you need to know they can survive a crisis with zero outside support, because help could be 20 minutes away by radio and still be functionally 100 million miles away in terms of actually arriving in time. The full medical account of what happened wasn't even widely published until decades later. In 2009, the British Medical Journal printed a detailed case report describing the operation, drawing on Rogozov's own notes and recollections passed down through his family. Reading it now, what stands out isn't just the surgery, it's the calm, clinical language he used to describe nearly dying. Doctors who reviewed the case afterward were stunned not by what he did, but by how methodically he did it, as if some clinical part of his brain simply refused to acknowledge how impossible the situation actually was. Think about that for a second. The same brain that was terrified, dizzy, and in agony was also the brain calmly directing two amateur assistants through a procedure it had only ever performed on other people. That split between the part of you that panics and the part of you that problem solves exists in everyone. Most of us never have to find out which one wins when the stakes are this high. Rogozov didn't become famous right away. He returned to the Soviet Union, kept working as a surgeon, and for years rarely spoke about that night in detail. He didn't see himself as a hero. He saw himself as a doctor who had a patient that happened to be himself, and he did what the job required. But his story has quietly become one of the most studied examples of human performance under extreme isolation, referenced in medical training, psychology research, and even space mission planning. It raises a question that's almost impossible to answer until you're tested the same way. Where is your limit? Not the limit you assume you have? Sitting comfortably wherever you're reading this. The real one. The one that only shows up when there's no other option left. So the next time a minor inconvenience derails your whole day, when a headache or a long line or a slow internet connection feels unbearable, remember the man who once had to find calm at the absolute bottom of human possibility. He wasn't superhuman. He was a tired, scared 27-year-old in the middle of nowhere with no backup plan. He simply discovered in real time that he could do the thing he thought was impossible, because the alternative was worse. And maybe that's the real lesson hiding inside this unbelievable true story. You never actually know what you're capable of enduring, what your hands can steady themselves to do, what your mind can hold together through, until the moment arrives that gives you no other choice. Most of us will never face anything close to what Rogozov faced that night in Antarctica. But all of us carry the same basic wiring he did. The question isn't whether you have it in you. The question is whether you'll ever find out. So the next time you wake up at 2 a.m. with nothing more than a stomachache, maybe you'll think of him and realize just how lucky that small inconvenience really is.